Okay, we are starting a new live stream today. We are gonna have a very short stream, hopefully here. I have a couple of things that I have to get working on, but for today, I kind of want to stream my process for making the HP system. So, genuinely want to make sure that I'm able to do that here. But let's just go ahead and give this a moment. Let's see how this works. All right, so we should be currently streaming at the moment. I believe the audio should be okay and that the connection should work. If anybody has confirmation on that, that would be absolutely amazing. Just let me know, and then we should be a-okay. And yeah, without further ado, today is Friday, right? What is it? There we go. Okay, we got Not Sell in the chat saying hello to Not Sell this wonderful Friday. And yeah, so okay, first thing that I'm gonna do when I do any stream, as you guys already know, I'm gonna open this notepad that says objectives.txt, okay? And because I'm always jumping left and right and I gotta absolutely make sure I know what I have to do, we're gonna go ahead and pinpoint exactly what we need to do today, right? So I've probably already mentioned it previously, but I'm just gonna note down all the way down here that we're gonna work on what's called the HP system, right? And what that basically means is we're gonna make sure that our character has the ability to take damage from the bullets and the projectiles that we were making last time, right? So there are going to be a couple of things that we have to pay attention to, right? So number one is, well, okay, let's take a step back, right? What is an HP system? That's, you know, how much health points do you have relative to your character, relative to how much damage you're taking. So we probably want to start off with idealizing how would that work, right? So we need to make sure that when the object touches our player, we lose health, right? So we would say colliders touch would be the signal to lose or gain HP, right? So that's saying, hey, if we have a projectile that hits our character, what happens? Boom, we lose HP. We could also gain HP if it's like a health, a potion, a heart, something that's like effective that way, right? What else? So what we could also consider is states, specifically ailments, right? And what that means is if I get hit, do I flinch? Do I have an invincibility frame? Like what happens immediately as soon as I get hit, right? So I like to add these things called the ailment states. And what that means is we're gonna see, does our character flinch? Does our character have iframes? And does our character kind of like lose control for a second, right? So I would say, what's the word? Like heavy flinch, maybe? I'm trying to see if this makes sense, right? But a flinch basically means that you can't control the character the moment he gets hit. So let's just write that down real quick, like lose control for a moment. Iframes are basically the amount of frames or the time you're going to be invincible. And that's pretty important because if we're designing a bullet hell or, you know, a game that has like a bunch of action, taking a hit can sometimes be advantageous because then you're basically blinking for a little bit and you're like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I gotta, you know, refocus for a second. So I'm going to write down time that gives us invincibility. Also, I don't have autocorrect on this notepad, so I have absolutely no idea if I'm spelling that correctly or not. And yeah, for now, I think I'll leave it at flinch and iframes. There is one more state that I personally like to call combo-able, or like comboable. And what that basically is like what happens if you get hit, and then you kind of like lose control for a second, but you can maybe kind of react. But the whole point is like in that state where you're like, okay, I just got hit. What if I'm not in an iframe state, right? What if I'm not invincible? That means when you take another hit, you just lose more HP, right? So in this example, right, imagine you're playing, I'm trying to think of like a really good example here, but think about like a fighting game, right? Maybe you get jabbed, and, you know, just because you got jabbed doesn't mean that you stop fighting back, right? You just take damage, but, you know, you're still reactable, right? But in fighting games, you get comboed. So you can get like jabbed and then jabbed again, and then you get the hook. That's 3 different attacks going in like a chain, right? So I want to program it so that if you get hit by a bullet that is comboable, something that can, you know, hit you multiple times, then yeah, it's like a string of attacks that, you know, hits you in a combo in a chain, and you would lose multiple HP points for doing that. So I'm just gonna put chain based attacks, right? And I'm pretty sure there's going to be way more things that we have to add for an overall HP system, but today I just want to measure, hey, how can we do that with our character, right? So, step number 1, scope. What are we doing? We're going to make an HP system. We are specifically going to do the colliders touching each other to send the signal of losing or gaining HP. And then we're going to work on the ailment states, which is the attack I'm getting hit by, is it something that can combo me? Is it going to induce iframes? And am I going to lose control for a second, which is also known as a flinch, okay? That's what I'm going to focus on the stream. And if I get sidetracked and such, then awesome. Let's see what happens. So there's that. So we have our Unity hub. This is basically where all our projects are, and I'm going to open the current one that we're working on, which is DodgeKing Deluxe. This is the process that we're streaming. I'd also like to open one of my side games, just in case if I forget a step, I can always kind of like reference an extra point here. So I'm opening 2 Unity projects here, but you know, let's not worry too much about the side game right now, because that's like, hey, if I genuinely forgot how to do a super simple collider, right, then I can just check that, or I can just Google. That's definitely going to be our best friend too, but we'll check that out later. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and start loading. Shouldn't take too long to load. I don't know how to run polls in the chat. I guess type 1 if I make sense. Type 2 if I'm tired, I don't know. What do you guys think? Actually, that'd be a really good question here. Do you think this little explanation here makes sense? 2, I'm tired. Yeah, I definitely am, right? So genuinely gotta work on that. But for the viewers watching, actually, makes sense. Okay, cool. So we have some confirmation that the system makes sense, but you know, maybe I speak a lot of like technical terms here and such, so if I need to slow down, feel free to let me know. But the cool thing about game development is that it's kind of easy to pick up, because if you've played video games before, which, come on, that's like a common hobby that a lot of people do, you kind of know what that means, right? Like, oh, what's a combo? Well, in a fighting game, when you get hit a lot. What's flinch? That's when you let go your controls for a second. What's an iframe? That's how much time you're going to be invincible. So hopefully, you know, that makes sense. Before I do anything with the game, what I always like to do is do a quick rundown, just to make sure that all the menus, all the gameplay mechanics are working. So I'm just going to do a very, very quick playthrough here, right, of what I currently have. Give the viewers a recap of what we have, what we made. So, right before we do that, hold on, let me do maximize. All right. So this is going to be our, it might be loud here, but this is our warning scene, followed by the intro. And then we transition into the main menu. And what I'm going to do is probably, okay, so we have our settings menu here. I don't know if the audio is loud enough. So this is something that we made in the, well, I didn't make a stream or a video about this, but I made this menu in the background here, but we have screen sizes, right? And the screen sizes only work on the actual build of the game, and it's not working so far. We made a funny little joke where if you went from windowed to full screen, it just absolutely messes up your ratio. So I gotta like fix that immediately. We have master volume, which basically is what's controlling every single sound effect. And then we also have the music volume independent from the master volume. So it can be pretty loud. We don't need that much noise, right? And then we have sound effects, which, you know, that's fine. Controller mode, we have standard, last direction, and mouse control. I haven't implemented anything regarding that, but it is what it is. So, you know, maybe in the future where we start working on the controller sides of things, I can say, okay, standard means this control. Last direction means something else, so we can do that. And then we have languages, but it's also not translated completely well. Well, the problem with the font in the Unity system sometimes, right now we're using TextMesh Pro, which is a component that has a little bit of limits of what type of fonts you can put. So for example, we have Espanol instead of Español without, you know, there's no little squiggly line on the end, so that's something I gotta look into, but we have a language system and then we can just reset everything, but we don't need to do that. Collection, el tilde. That's what it was called, the tilde. And then collection is basically going to be where we have all our upgrades, where we can customize our character and such, but we have nothing there. Exit would just close the game. These buttons would be the marketing buttons. So it's like, hey, join the Discord, join my website, join my YouTube channel. I don't know, like we'll see, right? And then yeah, you press start, and you have the character select. Minor spoilers because we're testing everything. All the characters are unlocked. I should really lock them all again and it just only tests this one. But you know, technically you have the ability to scroll through your characters. Every character has a name, an ability, and the description of the ability. So the one that we'll be testing the most is going to be All Night, specifically because I haven't programmed any other characters. But you know, if the base game is fun without any abilities, then imagine how the game would play when we have abilities, right? So for example, Prankster has the ability called Gemster, and that basically means that gems and upgrades will appear more frequently. So there's going to be a mechanic in the game where items pop up everywhere, and this character just happens to increase that spawn rate. For those Pokemon players out there, Mycenae gets Popcorn Punch. Think about Huge Power or Pure Power, where basically your attack gets doubled. So that's literally the whole premise of this character. And then we even have another character called Mirror. He has Reflectus, which means all attacks are, what do you call it, AoE, which is area of effect. It's always going to be like in a circular. So instead of like hitting in front, you're always hitting like in a circle. Could be good, could be OP, we don't know. Only time will tell. But once you have your character ready, ideally we have 2 more menus. You choose the character, you choose the set of upgrades and equipment that the character can run into, and then like the game mode that you want to play. But we only have this one menu, so once we press ready, we just jump into the game. Then we're able to move up and down, left and right. On our right, we have this little pink thing, and that is the bullet that we programmed in our last stream. So technically, we're supposed to be able to jump over it if we just, you know, time it right. And it's moving ridiculously slow, so you don't have to really worry too much about it. But our goal today, what we're trying to do, is if it touches us, we're supposed to take damage, and, you know, that's actually another thing that we didn't write down. We talked about taking damage and the states, but we didn't talk about the effects, right? The effects are critical. They're extremely important. They are what communicates, you know, how do we take damage, how do we do this, how do we that. So for effects, we need a sound effect of, hey, this is what it sounds like when you got hit. We probably want the screen to shake, which means we're going to have to play with some camera systems. Maybe our character glows red for a second. We probably want a little, what do you call it? Like, not an explosion effect, but kind of like something that like indicates like, boom, you just got hit, right? So maybe like a particle effect here. And we could also make the character shake as well. And there's probably something else we could do to communicate. So chat, if you think there is another special effect you would like to see when our character gets hit, feel free to let me know. Because I added this last minute here, I understand this might take a little bit more time since there's more systems for special effects, but it's still very important and we should not dismiss it so quickly. And actually, I think this would be a great opportunity to, where's our bullet, right? It's over here, yeah. What's up, bullet? And I think this would be a great opportunity to briefly showcase the other game. I know I said I wouldn't, my bad. But the reason why I would do that is because the other game does have these effects implemented already, except for the camera shake in this case. So what I would want to pay attention to here is, just want to showcase something real quick. This is technically where we're going to recreate. And so you might be asking, oh, why don't we just copy all the scripts here and then put it in the other project? Technically we could, but there are going to be a lot of overlapping systems that we do not need, and it's a lot of clustering at the end of the day. So, you know, let's say we have this other game here where it's a grid battler. You can find more of it on my channel. And then if you enter a battle or whatever, right? When you get hit, you'll notice... Okay, that's kind of loud. Hold on. You'll notice that there's a little number that shows up, which is another good effect. We should do number fades away above character. Right. So we have the little number. Our character glows a specific color. You see that our character has an animation when they get hit, which is another thing I completely bypassed. So we'll do character animation of getting hit. We also have the character actually shakes. Let's see if we take damage here. So like a little shake, and the shake is kind of like, it replicates I was gonna say structural vibration, right? But it basically does like a lot of shaking, then it like slows down, and then it gets really still, and then it goes back to normal. So literally think of like a spring, right, where it goes everywhere and then back to normal. If anything, I kind of want to focus on that. So character shape like a spring. Clearly, you can hear sound effects of us getting hit. So you can hear the but. And then also, there's another little detail that I also put in this one where the sound effect changes depends on how heavy the attack is. So you have a light sound for 1 HP or like something light, but we can also do a heavier sound for stronger attacks. I'm probably dead. Yeah, I'm dead. Also, that's another thing. There's a small little detail where when you get hit by a very powerful attack or like a special attack, the time of the game, so like basically there's a slow-mo, right? But it's so quick that you probably don't notice. But the reason why we do that is so that when you get hit, there's this large impact of like, okay, that just happened, and then like you go back into the present time. So we would probably want to add slow-mo that plays for a few frames. All right. And I had this like little, not rant, but tangent, right, where I basically say like special effects is super important because these are the things that fundamentally makes the game feel like a game, right? It's so easy to go ahead and play a prototype and have everything that works in a programming function way, which is, hey, it does what it needs to do, which is cool. But the effects ultimately is what carries the experience of you saying, oh my gosh, wait, I'm actually playing this game. I'm actually getting hit like that. I'm dodging like this. I'm doing that. That's super important. I probably will not cover this part here in the stream because right now we're kind of focused more on like the programming part, which I'll get into momentarily here. But this is something that I cannot dismiss. And if anything, we're going to have to take probably another stream to, work on this here. But notice how many little effects happened every single time we took one piece of damage, right? So to review, right, sound effects varies on if you got hit with a light attack or a heavy attack. The screen should shake depending on the type of attack you took. The character glows red or has some type of effect that indicates, hey, I just took damage. There's also a particle effect where in the game here we had little stars coming out of a character. Our character physically shakes like a spring. And by the way, the spring shake is dependent on how heavy the attack is. So if the attack was really light, it would literally be like minor. But if it was like a big fire or whatever, then it becomes like really violent and then it goes back to normal. There was a little number that indicates how much damage we took and it fades away into the background. The character itself has an idle phase, whatever, or a shielding phase, and then it gets hit, comes back. And then finally we had the little slow motion effect in the, every time we got impacted, the game's time slowed down for like 1 or 2 frames to feel like that impact really like hit you. I'm probably missing more things. This is the crazy part, but these alone should be good effects for getting hit. All right. So we covered that there. Yeah, so now we know our menu works. We know our gameplay is still functioning the way that it has to. So yeah, chat. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Press 1 if that makes sense. Press 2 if you guys want some hot dogs later, I guess. Pause. But yeah, okay, we got some 1s. Let's go. Appreciate that. And some 2s. That's crazy. All right, so I guess we're kind of hungry tonight. I'm hungry to code, so why don't we go ahead and open up something here, right? So, as you guys already know, and I'm going to try to see if I can zoom this in, because what I noticed is maybe my hierarchy isn't showing up that much here, but all the way on our left, this is the Unity hierarchy. This is basically all the game objects that we have, and I like to organize it under categories. So literally what I could do is right-click here, press create empty, and it just spawns a game object. Transform basically means where it is. Transform means where it is relative to the game world. So I always like to make a new object, and then I like to do this thing called reset. Places everything to 0 and everything back to 1. Super important because that basically lets us know, hey, like our object is physically located here, right in the center of the entire game, which is, moving left and right, whatever. You see, you can barely see that the object's over here. I'm probably lagging on the stream, which is funny. But if I reset, boom, it'll be right in the middle of the game, right there. Okay, so the reason why I do that is to keep my hierarchy organized, right? So let's say I have game object, and let's say, I don't know, let's call this town map, right? And what I would do is I would duplicate town map by doing Control D, attaching that under, and then here I could say, oh, I have the ground, right? I can't spell. I would say ground. I would say we have a house, I guess, and then we also have a dog, right? Y'all like dogs, right? And so what you could do here is, because you have these game objects, so we have a town map, right? We have the ground, we have the house, we have the dog. Like, these are literally just empty files or empty. So game objects could be considered files because they have a bunch of like components that you can put into. But maybe I'm going too deep with this. But the long story short is like, okay, you can just make names and then attach things into that, and based on what you attach is what you want to make, right? So for example, ground, I'm going to go ahead and kind of refocus my Unity here. See if that works. You can barely see ground, right? But let's say ground. If I right-clicked and then if I did 3D objects, cube, right? We have a cube. It's just a normal cube. And then on the right side, I have the ability to, edit the. I'm trying to see if I can grab the video here. I don't even know what I'm grabbing. Okay, so we can edit the cube's like scale, transform. So transform position would be like literally where it is relative to the host object, which would be ground. Scale would be, okay, scale X. Oh, look at that. That's a wide ground, right? Oh, what if I play with Y? Okay, that's too tall. What if I play with Z? Oh, look at that. That's a really long ground, right? So that's just transform, right? But like we can add components, we can add scripts, we can add a bunch of things. But yeah, definitely like this is something that we can go ahead and do. And we got a question in the chat actually. It says, I'm a bit late, but will there be any special effects dependent on the enemy? Like if an ice enemy hits you, you turn light blue instead of red. Flinches last a bit longer. I don't know. Yeah, so that's absolutely a great question. Actually, and I think that's something great that you observed, because in this game, that's kind of what it was. You saw that our character turned blue and then kept shaking because they got hit by an ice attack. And then they turned red, but then they stay red when they got hit by a fire attack. And then they even turned yellow when they got hit by the electrical attack. That is something that is actually really important to note down. So what I'm going to do here is also add that to my notes. So thank you, Notcell, for that recommendation. And what we can do in the effects is effects dependencies. And what that means is, example, fire effects is smoke plus lingering dark red. We can also do ice is blue plus flying crystals plus shaking. And then we can also do like electric is, shake, you're kind of static, yellow, and you have like little electrical, little electrica jingy things, whatever, popping out, right? And that's a really good observation, because that is kind of what we did here. Let me see if I can show it again. So here, for example, I'm paralyzed, and now like I'm kind of fine. But when I'm paralyzed, I'm not shaking. I'm actually like stiff, right? Here she might do the fire attack. Hopefully, it's RNG based. I don't have control of that. Okay, ice. So I'm still shaking, right? I have little blue crystals everywhere, and yeah, it looks like you're kind of cold. And then hopefully she throws fire. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so we're gonna dodge that. Okay. But yeah, when we get hit by the fire, we should have smoke coming out of our character. We got paralyzed again. We'll just try that one more time. But yeah, absolutely. To go back to the topic here, like, yeah, the effects should be dependent on the type of attacks we're getting hit by. And right now, because we're only focused on the projectile that this game has, and there goes our town map. Oh, I just realized I'm not even streaming that part. Oh, there's the fire. Okay. Yeah, so here, I'm on fire. I have smoke. Little flame bits are coming out. So that's like really important, right? So definitely really good suggestion and observation there, because that is truly important to keep that in mind. And again, I am not doing great with this scaling screen thing. I'm trying to keep that in mind. Also, I realized that we didn't even get a chance to read this properly, but there we go. Okay. Yeah, so HP system, what we were talking about. These are all the effects that we want to make sure that we have. And then what Notcell is mentioning here is, you know, what about effect dependencies? What if you got hit by fire, ice, electric attacks, right? Then that's also something to consider. Once again, these effects, these are the most important part, because this is what's going to make the game have that experience of, okay, this feels like I'm actually playing something that affects me as a person as I'm going through this. So I'm going to go ahead and scale the screen again. I scaled the wrong screen. I scaled the wrong screen again. One of these days I'm going to scale it incorrectly, and you're going to see some questionable dog pictures in the back. So pause. Okay, so cool. So to get into the coding part, right, what we're going to do is I would like to take our character first. And what that means is we're going to have to look at where our character is placed in the hierarchy, and that should be under player. And then under player, there's this object called player follow point. So I'm going to zoom this in really quickly, but we have our player, then we have the local controller, and then we have cube, and we have the player follow point. Player follow point is literally what's in charge of where our player is going to move. So every time we move left or right, that literally teleports like a couple of grids away or whatever, and that's actually where our hitbox is going to be located. And in our script, which is all the way here on the right side, we have a script called Basic Player Script version 1. It has a bunch of variables that we're going to get into. But what I'm going to do is left click here, or right click here, and press edit script. And that way we'll have a new screen where it shows us code. And this is going to be our code that we have so far. I'm going to try to see if I can align it a little better. Let me see if it's still readable. So basically, right, we have a bunch of functions and variables and everything here, so we'll get into that later. But what I want to start writing is our fundamentals, right? So before I do absolutely anything, I want to make sure HP system takes damage. That was loud. Elements and effects, but we'll also do effects for later. So I'm gonna start off real quick. You see, I already lost track. Where are we? Down here. There we go. So I'm gonna start off with void damage output. This is gonna be a super simple script that takes how much damage we're gonna receive through integers. So we're gonna do a parameter of integer amount, and all we're saying is, well, we're gonna need a HP variable, so we're gonna do a public int max HP, public int current HP. What we're gonna do is current HP plus or minus, or yeah, plus equals amount. And we're technically always going to get, negative amounts, because we're taking damage. So it's probably just more optimal to do this. And what we would probably want to do is when we heal or when we pick up an item that's like a potion, a heart, something that gives us more health, then we just multiply the amount by -1 and then we heal that amount. And once that happens, we're going to keep track of that in a second. But this is what's going to be the first major variable, right? We have max HP. Why do we have max HP? Because when you make the character at the beginning of the menu that we talked about, there might be an upgrade. There might be a permanent upgrade that says how much max HP you're going to have, right? Do you want to start your run with 3 HP, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 10? How much is that going to be? Completely dependent on your character's build, on your upgrade, what type of character you're playing with, and what type of upgrades you end up collecting, right? So that's something pretty important. And then current HP just represents how much HP you actually have while you keep playing, okay? Amount is going to represent the amount of damage you're going to take. Typically it should be 1, but again, maybe there's going to be more, right? There's probably going to be another type of attack that does 2 damage, that does 10, that kills you in one shot, you know? Like, that absolutely depends on the type of projectile or weapon we're going to be fighting against or defending ourselves from. Okay. Pretty simple stuff. So chat, question for you. What happens when current HP hits 0? Or when it hits negative numbers, right? Like, if you are a lollygagger, right? And suddenly I'm like, wait a minute. I just got hit over and over and over. And you're at 0, you're at negative. That's correct, you die. And that sucks. Nobody wants to die, right? But here we are in 2024, right? So we need to write something that says, damn, we just died. How do we do that? So we're going to do if current HP is less than 0 or less than equal to 0. There's going to be 2 things that happens, all right? Current HP becomes 0 because if we have negative HP, right? If we have like, oh, you have -7 health. Cool, but I don't want to display that anywhere. I don't want to... It kind of looks like a glitch when your character has like, oh, you have negative... Like, that doesn't make sense, right? You kind of want to like leave it at 0. So we're going to say if your HP is 0 or lower than that, it just automatically reassigns itself to 0. And then we're going to run another script called death, right? So we do that by saying death with the little parentheses and statement mark. That means that's another function. So as a result, we're going to have to write another void. So we'll get there in a second. And Natsal also said it should be this one instead of that, which absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and save, compile. How do we compile? We just save, and then we literally jump back to Unity. It literally says compiling. And if there are no errors, which it appears there will not be any errors. If there were errors, it would show up in our console log, specifically here. I mean, I could just show that off real quick. I'll say, let's just remove a semicolon real quick, and then boom. Just like, oh, you missed a semicolon. It's like, well, my bad, fam. And I meant this one right there. Okay, so we can save that, recompile. Right? Please recompile. Not today. Okay. Cool. So we want to make sure that, okay, if you're negative HP, you die, we'll write a death script later, this and that. But also, how do we even know how much current HP we start off with, right? You could say, oh, current HP is going to always equal 3 or 5 or whatever, but isn't current HP dependent on max HP, right? So that being said, we're going to have to write somewhere where, you know, what max HP helps with. So we're going to do void start HP setup, or we can just name it HP setup. And what that is simply saying that max HP, rather, current HP equals max HP. That's it. But now we also have another concern, right? Chat, here's another question. What happens if my max HP is 10 and I heal with a candy, right? Like I get diabetes or something. I'm like, hey guys, I'm consuming this. It's great. Suddenly that piece of candy gave me 20 HP. I thought my max HP was 10. So what would my current HP look like after consuming that candy? There you go. Bingo. Not sell yet again, hitting it with a fire chat saying still 10. What does that mean? If we consume something that goes over, we need to resort our current HP into that number. So, yet again, we're going to go ahead and do another function that says if current HP is over or equal to max HP, and we're simply just going to reassign that current HP equals max HP. And that's literally all we have to do, all right? And the reason why we're putting that in the damage script is because it's going to have to go through the amount that we're taking or the amount that we're giving. So we're going to have to add the negative stuff here in a second, and then we just say, okay, cool, we're going to check. Are we overboard? If so, cap it. Are we underboard? If so, die, all right? That's what we're looking at. So the other thing is, hey, what if ammo is negative? Or what if we're healing up, right? So what we're also going to do is if, okay, so this is where we add another parameter, all right? We're going to do integer, there's a word that I had in the back of my mind, and I'm kind of blanking out here, but heal, we could also do bool. Yeah, we can just do bool, right? So if heal is true, we're going to insert the same logic. It's current HP plus this. And then all we do is else. We do the exact same thing, but of course we're going to subtract. Technically, there's got to be a better way to do that, but it's the same thing. It's saying, hey, we're going to check the projectile. Does the projectile heal us? No? Okay, take damage. Yeah? Okay, let's heal. That's all we're doing with this. Okay. Then we're going to do the cap checkers. So I'm going to write down caps, max HP, removes negatives / def. And then checks if damage or heal. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have two parameters. We have two ways to check. Let's save, compile, check. Shouldn't have any errors. Pretty basic right now. All right, sounds good, okay. So what else are we missing, right? We're gonna talk about the ailments and the touch. How do we get touched? Okay, pause. So, we have a function that we actually made last time, where it's responsible for what actually gets the colliders, which should be up here. Okay, technically it was that one down there, but I want to check something real quick. I want to make sure that's actually the correct one. Should be okay. Yeah, so I can just Control F, type colliders, it'll show up. I don't think that's the exact one I'm looking for, actually. Okay, I remember now. So, in our actual projectile, fun fact, it's gonna be a little funny here. Ooh. I gotta find a way to enable and toggle how to go through multiple screens. I guess I can do that later, but note to future, so I'm gonna write that down. Toggle Unity screens, screen. Because I know there's a button where you can just go back and forth. So like, okay, let's look at the hierarchy, let's look at this, right? But whatever. Okay. Anyway, what we did actually is that our projectile, which is homie down here, this guy, it's this wonderful projectile that's like lonely and everything, right? He has a script called projectile logic, all the way on the right, which is this right here. And we basically said like how it works, how it moves, how it connects. But in the script, we actually made something called contact, and that is what's going to be responsible for, distributing the damage here. So here we have a public void on trigger enter, what this does is it reads the collider component, right? So the projectile has a collider, and what is a collider? It's a little box that says, hey, are we touching things? Are we interacting? Are we physically, you know, touching? You can do Control Windows key plus arrow key to change your workspaces. That's Control Windows arrow. Bro, this is low-key mind-blowing. I didn't know that. Okay, that's such a. I'm writing that down. Thank you. Not so. That's insane. Cool. I just got mind blown there. So, anyway, this basically says I'm gonna read your collider, and then what are we gonna do? If my collider is touching an object that has player move point tag attached to it, then we're gonna do the script, this function, right? And if you notice, our player character, which is homie over here, this guy. If you look at his little tag object all the way on the hierarchy, it says, oh, what does it say? What does it say? Oh, look, player move point tag. That means when our homie, our little hitbox, touches the bullet, that's when it's gonna run the script that we're talking about, which is this part. Okay, pretty basic logic, right? Now, what does that mean for us? Well, transfer damage is right now just debugged. So it's like it's gonna do a little log. It tells us, hey, we touched something for real. So this is the part where we actually start getting a little bit more dicey. Now, what I would do is I would write a completely different script that is called the HP manager, and that would be what's responsible for communicating with everything that got touched and not touched, right? For this example, I'm gonna briefly test to see if this exact script can communicate with the other script by itself, and then I'll go ahead and make a manager, which means, going back to our notes, we're gonna have to write down manager, which is something that I absolutely forgot. This is why I'm terrible at scoping games, because I keep forgetting the basics. So HP manager, and what that basically is how to know what touched what. And in a single player game, you'll never need a manager. You don't need to have a manager, because you can know, okay, I'm just always, the only thing that's getting interacted is the main player. Like, okay, sure. The problem is if this game wants to be scalable, if this game wants to be adaptable, if this game wants to have a future that, you know, maybe there's multiplayer in the future, maybe you play as multiple characters at the same time, right? Like, what would happen? What design choices do I have to make sure that I don't shoot myself in the foot by saying, oh, it's just one guy, it's not a big deal. No, you know, that's where the HP manager would come in. It's a script. It says this projectile just touched character A. Who's character A? Oh, it's player 1. Okay, boom, take damage. Oh, this projectile touched character B. Who's character B? Oh, character B happens to be player 3. Boom. Okay, so that's what you want to do. That's the whole point of the HP manager. So what we're gonna do is go back to our player script here, and we're gonna change void into public void. And what that means is now other scripts can interact with damage output, and it's gonna have the two variables here, right? Going back to the projectile script, just to test, hey, can we actually interact with that? What we're gonna do real quick is on the top of our player script, we're gonna have we're gonna have what's called a static, right? And this is exactly what we're gonna do for the HP manager. So I'm gonna test it here, and if it works, all we do is transfer this section into the HP manager script, right? So what we're gonna do is public static, and what that means is we have to take the name of the script that we're using, give it another nickname, which is, let's say, the exact same thing, but with B as a lowercase at the beginning. Then we're gonna do void awake. And what void awake is it's the first possible frame that the game loads. It's like, what do you want to do exactly when the game loads? I want basic script equals this. So these two lines of code literally is what's responsible for making one script, not multiple, one script, always identifiable, all right? If you had two scripts that, you know, let's say we had two game objects, and both of them had this script, only one of them is going to end up having a public static, okay? And the reason why that's an issue is because public statics should be resolved or reserved for managers, for something that, like, other systems that communicate and such, right? If you have one player character then you have another player character, and both of them have the statics attached, you're only going to be reading one character at the entire time because only one can be available. So for instance, we have that line of code. What does that mean? I can take these two names, the component and the variable name, go back to projectile, paste it here, right? And if I say if the component dot nickname we gave it exists or not null, then we're gonna paste it again. And then we can call damage output because now it's a public function. And remember, we have two parameters, right? We're gonna do one damage and we're gonna do false because we said it's not gonna heal. Okay. So now if I save this and if I save this, we're gonna compile and we're gonna see if we have any errors, which hopefully we do. Check this out. We have an error. Member called awake can't be used. Why not? Unless I actually already have an awake. So I can just control F awake. Guys, I have an awake. Check that out. It's already here. Okay. Not a big deal. We're just going to move this part here into the awake. Okay, now we're going to compile again. Shouldn't have an error. And I misspelled damage output. It says here, whoops, I misspelled damage output because I didn't put the T at the end. That's embarrassing. I can just double click this line, it'll automatically transport me there. And would you look at that? Damage output. It's like after eating Taco Bell. Cantina, you know. If it had meat. Anyway, let's see, shouldn't have any errors. No errors, okay, cool. So, theoretically, we should now have the ability to touch the bullet, lose HP, and we should have something that works, right? Problem, I can't see anything because we haven't had any single special effect. I don't know if I got hit. Like, do I have a sound effect? Do I have a screen shake? Do I have a character glow? I don't have any of these, right? So that's a whole design process that I have to work on later. However, what we can do is use the inspector. And so the inspector literally allows us to know, hey, what's going on, right? So remember, we wrote down max HP and current HP, right? So we're going to say, oh, our max HP is 5, all right? And we assigned the max HP equals current HP over here. Problem with that, which is this one right here. Oops. I'm looking at the wrong script. That's hot. This one right here, HP setup. Problem. We don't have anything calling HP setup. So we're just going to have to run this function in the awake method. Or in the start method, which is kind of the same thing. So start method and awake method are identical. Awake loads right before the game starts, and then start is when the game starts. So it's literally one frame of difference. And they are important to recognize why you want to use start and awake differently. Because sometimes there will be components and variables that will not read when the game is about to load, which is awake. So you want to leave awake for probably your basic variables and such, but for things that need to connect, things that require other things and objects to load as the game finishes loading, that's where start would go. Well, let's run an experiment because I forgot. Can I do this for? Can I do this for awake? Can I call a function on awake? Probably not. It's probably for start. But let's find out. So we're gonna compile. Maybe it doesn't have an error, but maybe we don't get what we're looking for. And now we're going to pay very close attention to our script that says our HP stuff, right? So it should be this one. I'm going to go ahead and press the play button, which is this guy right here. And if current HP equal, like if the 0 transforms to 5, then we have it working. can't see that because I accidentally zoomed in. But I paused the game and look at that. Current HP equals 5. We're working, okay? Now, we're gonna get hit. Let's see if I can, I'm gonna have to, today I'm just playing with the streams zooming like crazy, it's ridiculous. Okay, we'll just quickly play through this, right? And now we're gonna get hit by the pink, don't say it, by the bullet, right? And boom, we interacted, we touched, right? And now, look at that. I gotta zoom in. But if you look very carefully, boom, max HP 5, current HP 4. That means every time we touch the bullet, we take damage. All right. Now I made it so that you can't take a lot of damage touching the same bullet. However, I need to verify that. You can. You see, we touched it 2 times, kind of off stream because I moved the stream, whatever. But you can touch it multiple times. So now we got to make sure that you only touch the bullet once and done. We're done. All right. And then we have to make logic for the bullet hitting you multiple times, whatever. So we'll get there, but that's probably for later processing. I just want to make sure that we have that working. So like transfer damage, right? This is saying, hey, once I touch something, you got touched for real, we're gonna transfer 1 damage. Got hit. I can make it a lock, right? Where it says got hit equals true. That's a bool. So I can even say if got hit is false or is true, well, we can just put a return tab and we're done. So you can do got hit equals true. That's the traditional way to do it. That's how I would do it, but I'm learning. You can just get rid of this. It's not a difference, but you're probably saving like half a microbit or something doing that. Yeah. So once you got hit, so again, logic of order, right? Did you get hit? No. Okay. Run this. Get hit. Oh, you got hit again. Okay, we're gonna stop. That's all it is. All you have to do. That's it. And if you look at this, detect. It even has the same thing. Got hit. Stop. Stop detecting, stop doing these things. Because fun fact, this is what's responsible for detecting if you dodged, if you jumped, or if you dodged the actual like bullet. You can't dodge or jump the same bullet multiple times. Maybe there's a power up that lets you do that, and then we have to fix that. But for the time being, we're just gonna say, hey, like if you got hit, you can't consider it a dodge. But maybe I can make it so that, oh, you dodged it. Maybe you want to dodge it again multiple times. But we'll get there. So I don't want to take too much time here doing the stream. Like I said, I do recognize there's a bunch of things that we have to do. And that's also part of the reason why game development takes forever. There are a couple of other errands I have to run here momentarily. So I will try to wrap up by just making sure we have that last experiment there. And first of all, I got to disable the player focus mode. Okay. Now, we can see the number populate on the bottom, and I know that the screen is going to be very small for the viewers right now, so just give me a second. But what we can also pay attention to is the fact that we will have an error code or a log code populate every time we get hit. So hopefully we only see 1 log code and we're done. So again, context, I play the game, bullet comes out, I touch it, and when I touch it, a log code should show. There you go. 1 log code showed up. Okay. So it, technically 2, but we're only focused on, okay. The first one that popped up was dodged. Let's ignore that. I gotta fix that. And then the second one said touched something for real. If I touch it again, it says that it does get detected, but we are still at. Check this out. I touched it multiple times. I'm about to have a seizure. Pause. Where is it? There. I touched it multiple times. HP equals 5, current HP 4. I did it. We did it. That's all it was. Okay. So, that's explaining in the most quick way. I'm also, personally, I'm just trying to learn how to, like, explain better. So, we'll get there. But yeah, basically that's like, okay, super basic HP system. Last thing I have to do before I forget is make the manager. So what I'm gonna do here is scroll all the way back up where the awake was, which was over here. Okay, so to make the manager, right, what I would do, and I think it's critical to absolutely have all the managers in one folder because that is like the core foundation of how games get communicated. So I would literally make a folder called managers, right? And I want to show this off real quick. Still looks a little laggy or blurry. Oh, could be better. So when you double click on managers, you have the manager folder, right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna right click down here. You can't see it, but let's do this. Okay. So I'm gonna create, and all the way up here, C# script spawns a little thing here, and we're gonna call it HP Manager System. And here, this is the one. This is the one that's going to be responsible for. So this is what happens when you open a blank C# script in Unity. We're going to take away generic. We don't need that right now. We're going to take away these functions. Start and update. Start is the first frame. Update is every frame. What are you doing? And then we're going to paste the. We're going to do the same thing. Public static. Public static. But because this is called HP Manager System, we're going to have to call that HP Manager System, and then we'll say HPMS, just for the quick abbreviation of what that is. We're going to do the void awake. We're going to do HPMS equals this. And now, if we want to communicate to anything, so first of all, I would save that. The projectile, remember how we said, oh, transfer damage is going to hit the player and everything. Well, now we're going to reference the manager. So we're just going to replace this part here. Now we're going to add 3 parameters. We're going to do 1. And why are we doing this? Because now the manager has to have the damage output in order to to send that to our player. So basically all we're doing is we're adding a bridge, right? We're basically saying we have the projectile. Projectile is going to talk to the manager. Hey, manager, can I hit up the player? And the manager's going to say, why? Then the manager is going to say, okay, sure. And then that information that went into the manager gets hit by the player. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that the manager can detect, and as the name implies, manages multiple players, right? Right now we only have one player, and sure, like it's not a big deal to do that right now because we only have one player, not a big deal. But what if you had an upgrade that, oh, suddenly you have a pet that's following you? Technically, that may be an NPC, right? That might be a non-playable character following you, but that might have its own HP, right? What if you have a guardian that's sitting in front of you as your shield, right? Like you can still play, you can still move around, whatever, but you want to make sure that he takes his own damage, not you. Maybe there is multiplayer, right? Maybe I do say, hey guys, 2 players came out, and you know, how do I know that I got hit and not my friend, or how do I know if my friend got hit and then not me? It would be weird if they shot my friend and then I died for that, but I mean, 2024, you know, so whatever. So yeah, cool. Damage output. We send the information. We're gonna make another public void damage output. I'll just name this receiver, and then I'll call this receiver, just to make sure it's different, right? It's gonna have the integers of output or amount, the bool of if it's heal, and integer of to who. Okay. And then what we're going to say is amount equals. So we'll send this all momentarily. I just want to make sure I'm compiling this correctly. So I'm going to save. So projectile has been upgraded. HP has been set. I should compile. Shouldn't have any errors. And if I do, it's probably because it's HP Manager. Oh. misspelled receiver. There we go. Okay, so compile. So I had an error where I misspelled receiver, but now it is fixed. Okay, so we can go back. Okay, and what HP Manager is going to also do, we're going to also write one more script here. How do we know how many players are available, right? Because in Unity, what you can do is you can take the game objects, and in the hierarchy, you can literally say something like, oh, actually, let me show off this real quick. So we have the projectiles, right? In the projectile script down here, there is a section. There is a section that says hosters, right? So hosters are saying, hey, we have other game objects that are interacting. Which one is that? I can literally click on the game object, and it'll literally say, oh, it's this game object over here. The cool thing about the hierarchy and the inspector is that you can literally drag and drop that information. So I could literally drag this, drop it into the hierarchy, and then it'll show up, right? So technically, with the HP manager, I could make it so that the objects are drag and droppable. Well, here's what happens, right? I start the game, and I spawn a new object, right? I have to make a script that makes that object automatically implants into the element of the inspector, right? The problem is if I say, okay, we have the player character here right now, let's just attach it, cool. The manager is losing its role on being a manager, because the whole point of the manager is, hey, I need to detect and then take care of what's going on. Not, oh, everything's automatically given to me, so I don't have to do anything, right? I can just, I can transfer information, but that's because you already are attached to me. So what I want to do to solve that is I want to write a for loop that detects all of the players available at the moment, and then says, okay, if this player exists, then let's go ahead and let's put it here, okay? So, and I'm doing that because I'm intending that when I make the game, when I make the level, when I spawn the character, everything's empty, and then the character spawns. Then it talks to the manager, and the manager says, yep, you are now in the playground, let's go, okay? Otherwise, if I took the attachment, if I took the, I'm just gonna put in the inspector and call it a day, I'm taking away the ability to have multiplayers, have multiple characters, because we don't really know how many players are going to be available in the game as you play, right? Maybe you unlock characters during the run. Maybe you have 2 pets. Maybe you have a guardian. Maybe you have 3 guardians and 2 pets. Maybe you're doing multiplayer, and then your friend picks up the guardian and the pet. Like, we don't know. So we want the system to be flexible to do that. That's the whole point of the manager. So what we're going to do is public game object. We're going to do the array. We're going to say player objects. Also, what I like to do is these little brackets called headers, and you can literally, so fun fact, the little thing that I'm doing right now, header with the parentheses and the quotes, I'm literally writing how I want the inspector to look like. So I'm going to say list of players. So when I save this, I should have an array of game objects that I can see, and the inspector should say list of players. But right now we only have the script, right? Like literally just this. This isn't attached to anything. Remember how I was talking about the town map stuff and everything? So I could just go to the hierarchy. I could go to create empty. And I can call this, what's that? HP manager. Let me type it real quick. HP manager. HP manager. Yeah, manager. Okay. HP manager is just an empty object. It's not doing anything, right? But if I drag and drop the HP manager system here, boom. List of players, player object. How many player objects do we have? Let's say 5. When I open it, I can literally drag and drop the game objects that I want to play with, basically, right? But we need to write the logic for that. So we're going to leave it default. We're going to go back to our code. We're going to wrap this stream up with the for loop. All right. We're going to do another void called players. What we're going to do is for each. And this is where it gets a little complicated. You want to say the script that's responsible for the player. So it's basic player script 1. We're going to call that B in No, I'm doing it wrong. So I said I wouldn't do this, but there's literally a line of code that I have in the other project that does that. So instead of Googling for an hour and a half, because I forgot, I'm going to quickly open the other project and see what it was. But the idea was it says, okay, search for every script, search for every game object that has this script. If that game object actually has that script, put that in the array. And once we do that, that's when we can say, okay, now we have a list of characters that have the script. Therefore, we have a list of characters or objects that are eligible to take damage. Because they're eligible to take damage, then now when they do take damage, we can actually do that responsibility for them. So that was called, I genuinely forgot what that looked like, but, there was I wrote a checkpoint, because that's what it did. We checked all of the possible things that needed to be checkpointed. And if I'm not mistaken, oh yeah, my game over script 100% has the thing I'm looking for, but I'm trying to see if checkpoint. If you're looking at an old checkpoint system, it is terrible. Yeah, it's not here. It should be. Let's do game over. Game over manager. Game over manager. Game over logic. This one right here. Okay, I'll explain this in a second. So, okay, little rough here. So little complicated, but it's also super simple. Okay, we have an array of a C# script. That's all it is. We're naming it something. And what that is there's a game object. We're going to find every game object in the scene that has the name of the script that we're looking for. That's all we're doing, okay? And then for every game object that has the script, which is the same name as what we gave it, but we're just adding another variable in front. Don't worry about that. We can now interact with that object. So how that would look like here in our context is basic player script. We're going to call it players. Okay? Players equals game object dot find objects of type. And we're going to say the basic script. So large it came out of the screen. Zooming in and out. It's not helping. Oh, that's actually not helping. The stream is interesting. I'm clicking on the wrong thing 20 times. I have no idea. Okay, a little blurry, right? But we have that. Now for each basic script players in players, that's where we're going to do damage. Well, yeah, we're going to do damage, output, or hold on. We'll get there. Just remove this. Yeah, that's when we're going to say player objects I equals I players dot game object. And we're also going to do int I equals 0 and I plus. Okay. So in theory, right? Bear with me. This is how managers are done. They're a little weird. Okay, but you do integer equals I. We're just having a number in the background. Don't worry about that. And then we're gonna find scripts that have that. We're gonna call it players. How do we know what that is? Oh, that's just every game object in the scene that has that script. Okay. For every game object that has that, or in this case for every I players and players, this is just a fancy way of saying, yeah, for everything that we found, we are going to now make the first the first game object in our game object list equal what we found. Then we're going to iterate with I. So then for each, right, let's say we found 7. Okay, we're going to do 7 times. If it's 7 times, that means we're going to have 7 different player objects. Okay. And then we do this by also doing void start and then call players. Reason why we're doing it in start and not awake, is because, again, awake is like right before it loads. Here we actually need it to load, because we're depending on what is spawned, what's been loaded, and everything. So just gonna try this one more time. So now I'm gonna save. And for okay, so no errors, cool. And for safety precautions, Unity has the ability so that you can populate how many game objects you want to add. I mean, we can run that experiment basically, right? Like, I can just leave this at 0. But what I'm saying is, like, you can leave, let's say, 10 spaces open so that, okay, no matter what, you're always gonna have 10 spaces available. If you need to make more, you can make more. You can you can add script functionality to add more. Not a big deal. But the reason why we have to, I'm assuming this is a safety way, right? But let's leave it at 0. Run a quick test. If I run, should populate, and if it doesn't, then it's not. Yeah, okay. So it's not populating because it says it's out of the array bounds. If I did 10, and then I played, maybe it shows up. Yeah, it shows up. You see, player follow point. You see, that's all it did. It said, oh, player follow point has her script, so let's put in the list. Okay. There is a way to write down how to expand the list on its own without you playing with the inspector. And I think that is important, actually. There was a whole way to do that. But I'll look into that later because it does cost a lot. I don't think it costs that much memory. Maybe it does. I don't know. But when you do it in a for each loop, it loses, like, you get the object in, then you say, okay, add another. And if you do it incorrectly, it removes the object, redoes it, and then adds the new object instead of the old one. So I know there's a more efficient way to do that. So I will look into that. I'll put that as homework to study. But for now, just open 10 slots, whatever. And at the end of the day, we can leave like 100 slots, right? Because let's say we have 8 players, and every player had 10 knights, and every, like, that's a total of what, like, 88 possible items. You probably have, like, more slots available and such. Like, that's fine. But yeah, the whole point is, like, yeah, just you can leave it open and you're set. So we call players, and now with our damage receiver, right, we're gonna do if player objects 0 exists, then what we're gonna do, player objects dot get component. We're gonna call the damage output, and we're gonna transfer the parameters, which is amount and heal. I don't know if I'm streaming that correctly. Whoops, yeah. Okay. So what we're saying is to who, and actually let me change this to 0. And this can be optimized, but all we're saying is, okay, projectile, what are you doing? Oh, I want to do 1 damage. I'm not healing, and it's to the first player. Okay, player manager is our player. Can we get our player? Yeah, we can. Okay, cool. So how do you deal with that? Oh, well, projectile's telling me that I need to transfer this data, which is this function. Oh, okay, so how are we going to transfer that? Oh, well, we're going to transfer 1 damage. Okay. We're going to make sure that it's a damaging attack, which said false. Oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, that's you. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, so cool. To who are we attacking to? Oh, the first player on the list. The to who part, that's something that we're going to work on in the future. We're going to change how that damage gets outserted. Because, again, we can have 20 billion characters, and if every bullet says, oh, to who equals 0, we're always going to, like, again, that's something we'll deal with. But for testing purposes, that's what we need to do. And if that's correct, clear objects. And if this is correct, then effectively we made a bridge from projectile to manager to player. Okay, we have an error code of HP Manager 32. Might be this actually. Get component. It's saying we're having a issue with the. It says semicolon is missing, but that's not true. Let me check that real quick. So this is a real debug part. So it says here error invalid expression term. I feel like it should have been like that, right? Get component. Damage output. Oh, right, whoops, okay. Yeah, I meant, oh, what component are we getting? The basic script, which is the whole thing that's doing that. And then in that function, that's what we're gonna do, damage output, there we go. Ammo, amount, and heal. Okay. Okay, should work. Loading. Okay, the error message erased, so we're set. Now, the moment of truth. Does it work? The only thing we have to do is look at our player follow point script, right? And we're gonna pay attention to the maximum HP and current HP. All right, so we're gonna put it right in the corner. All right. Moment of truth. This is the stream's work. All right. Okay, we're at 5 HP. When we touch the bullet, it should turn 4. Moment of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we done it.